well, let's get into the entree. The bye this week was the Rebels, and the first game of the weekend was the Force taking on the Reds, and went about as expected.
Yeah, look, I think early on in the last week we were sort of saying pick the Reds players against the Force. Things had been building against them, and this was a perfect example of what we thought was going to happen. At halftime, the Force were holding on, and it was 0 to 15. But in the end of the game, after the Force came out firing early in that second half to score a try, the final score was 5 to 57. So that is a big loss. 1 try to 8. In terms of the returns column, Nick Frisbee returned after his nose fracture, Henry Tafu after his concussion, Moses Sorovi after his leg injury, and Harry Hoopert from his round 3 MCL. In terms of new injuries, if you were playing in the centres for the Reds, you're probably going to get injured. Josh Fluke dislocated his shoulder, and then Hamish Stewart also had a hip pointer. What was that, Harry?
Both my fantasy players.
Yeah, so it serves you right for being a jerk. So Jono Lance, sorry, what was that, Craig?
I said great banner, boys. Good stuff.
Yeah. Jono Lance, he was actually pulled pre-game and dropped to the bench without much explanation at the time, but it turns out he had, I think, a pretty severe head laceration. So we saw Jack McGregor come into that starting side. We thought it might have actually been planned. Jack McGregor showed some good form early on in the game. I think Jono Lance did manage to come on pretty heavily strapped back into the game.
Yeah, you just had to see his head, mate. He could barely fit the headgear on because it looked like he was. His head was a bowling ball, mate. He had so much duct tape on it. But that also illustrates the importance of picking your bench player up because Jack McGregor did get picked up, and players did get withdrawn and players did slot in, and that can make a big difference. It didn't for me this week, still smashed Nabung, but it could make a difference to some teams. So
exactly right. Look, this week it was massive if you had Reds players. There was 2 tries to Dalguna in that first half, 2 tries to McDermott in that second half. I had both of them. And boy, how good is it to see McDermott go down that short side. There was less than a metre space. Pretty poor defence to have that space there, but that was just absolutely electric by him. Also, Taniela Tupou, another one of my players, could have had 2 tries, if not for tackling himself once. I can't remember how he bombed the other one, but he basically decided to try and step a defender rather than use his 135 kg frame to run over someone when he's a couple metres from the line. And
it got called back. I think there was a knock on or something first.
Yeah,
mate, I love it. He backs his pace as well. But the Reds put up a great post on Instagram, and it was just like the only person who can stop Nella is Nella.
Yeah. But yeah, look, the Reds were dominant throughout most of this one. And as the game went on, the Force looked more and more disinterested. I think as the season's gone on, it's got harder and harder for them being away from home and without that sort of depth and the time together that a lot of the other sides have had. But the match stats, the Reds had 60% of the territory and 54% of the possession, but they ran 636 compared to 298 run meters, 41 to 19 tackle busts, 21 to 4 line breaks, 17 to 2 offloads. Just absolutely dominant in all those stats. As well as the Force got 16 penalties and a yellow card, whereas the Reds had 9 penalties. There's actually 2 man of the matches in this one. Filippo Dalgunu, he had 92 points with 2 tries, 18 runs for 96 metres, 5 tackle busts, 2 line breaks, and 2 offloads. James O'Connor, another man of my team, had 92 points with a try, 4 try assists, 15 runs for 62 metres, 2 tackle busts, 3 offloads, and a line break. Tate McDermott got 86, Fraser McWright 77, Taniela Tupou 54, and even Bryce Hegarty got 53. And for the top of the Force, Richard Kaihui got 38.
And I think it's worth noting, I'm not sure how many he ended up kicking, but I think O'Connor only missed 1 conversion in the whole game.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he got 7. Maybe it was 8.
He got 8. He broke the record. I think the record was 7. He got 8, didn't he?
Yeah, crazy.
Maybe. You're telling the story?
craziness. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the. I mean, there's always a punter in every case, isn't there? But the punter who put $100 on the Reds to win by 51 points at $81 odds, and had a fantastic night, I guess, pulling in $8,000. So how good?
7 conversions and a penalty goal.
Excellent. Yep. Very good. All right. Well, that takes us on to the second game. I think we were the trend, you'll note, is that we all picked all the Reds players. That was the pattern you could see for this week. And so we're all a little bit less interested in this game. Harry and Nelson were still cheering on the Tars. As a loyal Tars fan, I was definitely going for the Brumbies because I wanted to win my fantasy week. But how did it unfold, Harry?
Yeah, so end score for this one was 38-11. 6 tries to 1, incredibly one-sided finish, but it's probably not the entire story. Returning, probably the big in was Nick White was coming off the bench for the Brumbies. Obviously, his first run since he's come back from the UK. So really good finish. I think he had, 25 minutes or something along those lines. And he looked polished and he looked very composed. And I thought he looked very, very good. So he'll definitely be challenging for more game time moving forwards. Tom Ross was coming back from his concussion, the Brumbies reserve prop. And Caterin Neville as well, who had disappeared to Japan through the COVID break, then realised that there was going to be no footy. He came back, had trained for 2 weeks and started for them as well.
You don't need to throw in extra R's when you say Caden Neville either. So
I was going to let it go, but I suppose you guys pull me up on names all the time, mate. I don't know what you're saying. It's Caden Neville, mate. It's pretty simple.
Caden.
2 syllables.
He's a Wallaby, so we can understand you not knowing his name. Yeah.
Times have been tough.
Look, if Rob Simmons was a Wallaby, then Caden Neville was probably one, to be fair.
He was before he left.
Anyway, new injuries. Carmichael Hunt was pulled probably Thursday night. I think it was actually off. I think announced on Friday night. Carmichael Hunt, he tore his hamstring in the week during training just after it was announced in the starting lineup. They said it was minor and he should hopefully be back soon. So hopefully for the Tars' sake, he's back next week. You also had a couple of injuries in the game. That was it. That was the only other injury in the game.
Awesome.
Yep. Good. Sorry, I confused myself. I was looking at Fluke and Stewart, but it was a typo. So in this one, look, I think I saw a post somewhere that said, some people will be saying that it was a flogging. Some people will say that it was a robbing. I don't know that I sit in either camp, but I definitely sit in the camp that says Australian referees and Super Rugby AU have been atrocious. And the TMO on Saturday night was probably the worst culprit of all of them. What's his name, Craig's your favourite TMO?
George Ayoub.
Yeah, the world's worst TMO, and he's proved it again. The game started, or the scoring started, with Ryan Lonergan scoring a try from a Bailey Kunzel, grubber through. And he was clearly offside by 2 or 3 meters. The camera showed it with the 20-meter line. Yeah. It was just so black and white. And yet the third umpire, Ayoub, said that it wasn't clear and obvious. Awarded the try. Complete terrible call. Even the commentators were blowing up. And then for me as a fantasy manager, got a try assist and conversion against me for it. 27 points.
I was going to say, I suspect our listeners could probably pick that up with the venom in your voice. Sounds similar to
Ayoub owes me round 1 of the semi-final. That's all I can say.
But I think the stark contrast there was if you compare that to Jake Gordon being called offside last week, where that was very marginal. This was a lot more evident, I thought.
This was blatant. But look, before we go on, as someone who is a Tars supporter, look, I think the Brumbies were more clinical. But that sort of stuff definitely, changes the course of the game moving forward.
Look, Tom Wright scored a try down the left touch line from an R.A. Simone forward pass that wasn't even looked at.
Clear forward pass.
Yeah, and then Pete Samu, his foot was out on the line when he scored as well.
Are you sure? I obviously
they showed it a lot of times. There was a clear single frame which they even paused on that showed his foot was out. So I just don't understand. I don't understand how 3 tries can be missed like that by George Ayoub. Just an atrocious.
I'll say, like you, I was up against Samu and I was hoping he was out, but I thought that I was happy for that to be given. I didn't think it was clear.
Look, that was probably the least, at least clear. But I thought it was out. And you include all of those, that's 19 points. And over the course of the game, I mean, that's going to wreak havoc on the Tars.
Yeah, it changes the whole momentum of the game. So, yeah, I know that they lost by slightly more than that, by 27 points. But, I mean, 3 tries, the entire momentum's gone from the game by that point. So, I don't know. I just thought it was a really, really poor effort from him. And it just, I guess, solidifies the fact that we all think he sucks. And I don't understand where he gets his praise from because I've never seen him have a good game. Anyway, moving on, George Ayoub, please retire. Ryan Lonergan kicking goals. I thought that was a big one. I think it was 50-50 in everyone's head if him or Kunzel was going to kick. I thought Kunzel would have been left as the kicker because of the fact that he was their kicker for the entire season. But no, they were happy to give Lonergan his chance. So that was a big moment for Lonergan owners there. I think some free points.
He must have won the competition at training.
Yeah, that's right. Well, maybe it is that simple, but I don't feel like that's good for a goal kicker's confidence either.
To be fair, he had 3 kicks, got 2. Bailey Kunzel had the last couple as well.
Yeah, when he went off the field.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, like, he got you 2 points for his kicking.
Yeah, and there was a lot of handling errors from both sides. Obviously, it was really wet in the first half, and I think that really took a lot of the momentum out of the game. It was a bit stop-start and probably not the best spectacle. Going into halftime, I think it was 12-11 to the Brumbies. Is that right?
Yeah.
And it looked like it was on for all money in the second half. I think Jack Dempsey looks really, really threatening. I think he's just put 3 performances back to back in a row now, and really excited to see him going as well as he was. But the second half just wasn't the same story. You had the Brumbies just dominate possession, dominate the play, dominate the attack. They scored all the points in the second half. I think 26-0. 4 tries to 0 in the second half as well. I thought the Brumbies line out was really dominant. They obviously had Caden Neville and Murray Douglas in there together for the first time since pre-COVID. They won 11 of their own 12 line outs, and they stole 5 of the Tars 13. Obviously the Tars is Rob Simmons and Ted Flanagan has been a real strength for them, their line out. So I thought that was a really, really big moment in a pretty wet game and a pretty dire game where there wasn't a lot of attacking opportunity for the Tars.
I think Neville's huge. I think he's
he's too vast.
Quite how big he is,
He's a big unit.
But also he's just come back from Europe where it's all about set piece. So
well, it's good for him to. It's funny watching someone like Caden Neville in a good team, because I never really rated him very highly until he lined up in the Brumbies pack. And then you just think this big unit, geez, he's in a winning team. He must be quite good. So I don't know. I think there's something to be said about just signing a contract with a winning team.
Definitely.
He seemed to come out of nowhere when he did make that Wallaby squad. I think it was 2012. I don't know if he ended up getting any caps, but he had a good season or 2 there, but then obviously went away for a long time, and he's too old. Like, he's not going to be in the Wallaby squad.
Mate,
he's 31
now as well, eh?
Yeah. Speaking of players in good teams, Bailey Kunzel as well was, I think, under a lot of pressure coming into this game, as the Brumbies had kind of lost their way. He's, as the fly half and the young fly half, I think a lot of pressure rests on his shoulders when maybe it probably shouldn't as much as it has been. He kicked extraordinarily well, 2 from 2 from the touchline. And then there was that one where he decided to kick a drop goal and hit the crossbar and just missed as well. So I thought that was really impressive. But off the back of that game as well, hearing everyone praise how well he played, I genuinely don't believe that he had that big a role in the Brumbies win. I think he's been kind of hammered a little bit harshly for the Brumbies' loss of form, and now he's been praised a little bit heavily for the Brumbies' return to form. I just don't see him having as strong an influence of what Noah Lolesio was in that side as well.
Agreed. Speaking of 5'8", what about Will Harrison, mate? He had in terms of fantasy, had a shocker. Ended up on -5 points, but he got negative 24 points through that game. 4 turnovers conceded, 2 penalties. He was the first picked fly half in our finals redraft. But
I thought Jock was.
No, the first fly half.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Jock was the first in our one.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
I wanted Jock Cargie. It just shows that obviously Nabon picked him.
Exactly. No, Nabon picked him up. Then I got James O'Connor straight after that. So it's fantastic.
Carter was the other one as well, right? Like we wanted to see him at outside centre, that big hard runner. They'd used him in the original Super Rugby season this year, running those lines even as a winger. I thought this was his opportunity to try and push a little bit closer to the ball, but he just wasn't very effective. I think he got 13 fantasy points. I don't think he was any more damage in running the ball than Kurandrani, and he's definitely not the same kind of solid defender. It was a wet night. I thought that would have been a real game for him to get them over the ad line, and he was okay, but I think he was quieter than we would expect.
Yeah, I would have
as well.
Yeah, I would have thought that he could have added a bit more punch, and the wet weather would have been perfect for him to have that bit of a trial in that position. Kurandrani hasn't been as solid as we would like, I think, in that 13 jersey from time to time. So it would have been interesting to see if he could add some spice, but maybe they're just not using that 13 channel very well. They're getting to their wings, and Carter was looking for the ball in tighter when he was at wing, and that 13 channel just doesn't seem to be something that's dominant at the moment for them.
I'm just how many runs did he have? You know, like was he actually getting ball?
No, I don't think he got a lot of ball, to be honest. You
can check. Runs. He had the fifth most runs in the game.
6
runs, yeah. So
I think we're clutching at straws here, but no, I agree. It's been a long, as a Kurandrani veteran. It's been quite a while since between drinks. There hasn't been a choo-choo celebration for a long time.
Absolutely. For the match stats, possession territory pretty even. Meters was 266 to 278, leaning towards the Tars, but both really, really low. So I think that kind of tells the story of how this game went. Really stop-start. There was 6-3 line breaks to the Brumbies. Offloads 5-1. The Brumbies chancing their arm a little bit more, I think, in the second half as they started to get on top of the game. Tackle percentage 86 to 83. So, kind of par on both teams. Neither exceptional, neither too bad. The lineouts I mentioned before, I think the Brumbies would be very, very dominant. The scrums, the Brumbies lost 2 of their 10. The Tars lost 1 of their 11. So I think, again, probably slight underperformance from the Brumbies, essentially Wallabies front row. They didn't really get any dominance there as well. So hats off to Tom Robertson, HJH, and Tommy Horton. I think they played quite well, with the exception of Tom Horton knocking the ball on 37 times. And Brumbies was pretty even as well, 11-9. In terms of the fantasy man of the match, Pete Samu, a couple of tries, 2 tackle busts, 2 line breaks for his 67 points. The Brumbies, the next best was Tommy Wright on 40 points, also scoring a double. And for the Waratahs, you had Jack Dempsey as the top with 43 points. And as I said, I think a pretty good running game from him as well.